The morning Lena Whitaker's life shattered, she wore her best dress. It wasn't much, a pale blue cotton thing she'd stitched herself 3 years ago. Its hem let down twice, its collar turned once to hide the fraying. But it was clean, pressed, respectable. And when she'd left her cramped boarding house at dawn, she'd convinced herself that respectability might be enough. It wasn't. The Bennett Ranch sprawled across the valley like a kingdom carved from stone and ambition. Lena had seen it from the train, miles of white fencing, herds of cattle moving like dark rivers across golden grass, and at its heart, the main house, a sprawling mansion of timber and glass that gleamed in the early light like something out of a fever dream. She'd come for work, a position in the house, anything. The advertisement had been vague, staff needed, apply in person, but Lena had long since stopped being particular. 6 months since the factory closed, 4 months since her landlord started leaving notes under her door, 2 weeks since she'd eaten anything that wasn't stale bread or watered-down soup. Desperation, she'd learned, had a taste. Metallic. Bitter. Like blood in your mouth after you've bitten your tongue to keep from crying. The gatekeeper had barely looked at her. "Servant's entrance is around back," he'd said, waving her off. Lena had nodded, swallowed her pride, and walked the long gravel path toward the rear of the estate. She'd expected a simple door, a housekeeper maybe, a quick interview. She hadn't expected a garden party. Hote. The back terrace was a sprawl of white linen, crystal stemware, and people who looked like they'd been born wearing silk. Women in pastel dresses that cost more than Lena had earned in a year. Men in tailored suits, laughing too loudly, their teeth too white. A string quartet played something light and forgettable near a marble fountain that burbled cheerfully, as if mocking her. Lena hesitated at the edge of the flagstones, clutching her worn bag. A woman noticed her first, tall, blonde, draped in emerald green that shimmered when she moved. Her eyes swept over Lena with the efficiency of an appraisal and found her lacking. "Oh," the woman said, her voice bright and sharp as a knife. "Did someone order entertainment?" Laughter rippled through the nearest cluster of guests. Lena's face burned. I'm here about the position. The advertisement. Position?" The blonde woman's smile widened. "Darling, I think you've misunderstood. This is a private event. I was told to come to the back." "Yes, well," the woman gestured vaguely. "Perhaps try the actual servant's door, where the help actually enters." More laughter, louder, now. Lena wanted to disappear, to sink into the flagstones, to turn and run and never stop running. But she couldn't, because running wouldn't pay the rent, wouldn't put food on the table, wouldn't change the fact that she had exactly $3.47 to her name, and a landlord who'd promised to throw her things into the street if she didn't pay by Friday. So she stood there, silent, humiliated, hating every second. "Honestly," the blonde woman continued, turning to her companions, "the audacity of some people, just walking up like they belong. Careful, Vivian." The voice came from behind Lena, low, male, cold enough to frost glass. The laughter stopped. Lena turned and saw him. Ian. Cole Bennett didn't look like a man who smiled often, maybe not ever. He stood at the top of the terrace steps, hands in the pockets of a charcoal suit that fit him like armor. Tall, well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, dark hair slicked back, jaw sharp enough to cut, and eyes the color of a winter storm. Everything about him radiated control, authority, the kind of presence that made people step back without realizing they were doing it. Vivian's smile faltered. "Cole, darling, we were just being cruel," Cole said flatly. "As usual." Vivian's mouth open, closed, her cheeks flushed pink. Cole descended the steps with the unhurried grace of a predator. He didn't look at Lena, didn't acknowledge her at all. But when he stopped beside Vivian, the air itself seemed to tighten. "This is a business function," he said quietly, "not a playground. If you can't conduct yourself with basic decency, you're welcome to leave." Vivian's eyes widened. Cole, I didn't mean, you did." 2 words, flat, final. Vivian's face went from pink to crimson. She turned sharply, nearly spilling her champagne, and stalked toward the far side of the terrace. Her entourage scattered like startled birds. The remaining guests exchanged uneasy glances. Someone coughed. The quartet, bless them, kept playing. Lena stood frozen, unsure whether to thank him or flee. Cole still hadn't looked at her. Mr. Bennett! An older man in a dove-gray suit approached, his expression tight with barely concealed irritation. A word, if I may. Cole's jaw ticked. Not now, Harrison. It's rather urgent. I said, it's about the inspection. Cole went very still. Lena didn't understand the weight in that word, but she felt it, saw the way Cole's shoulders tensed, the way his gaze cut toward the older man, sharp and dangerous. 5 minutes, Cole said. Harrison nodded and retreated toward the house. Cole exhaled slowly, and for the first time he looked at Lena. His eyes were gray. Storm cloud gray. And absolutely unreadable. You're here for the housekeeper position, he said. Not a question, Lena nodded. Yes, sir. I saw the advertisement. You're early. Yes, I thought. Interviews aren't until this afternoon. Lena's heart sank. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Wait in the kitchen. Mrs. Brennan will see you at 2. He turned to leave. Thank you, Lena blurted. Cole paused, glanced back. For what? For, Lena gestured helplessly, for stopping them. Something flickered in his expression, too quick to name. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cold mask. Don't thank me, he said quietly. I didn't do it for you. And he walked away. Oh, the kitchen was warm, chaotic, smelled like roasting meat and fresh bread and something sweet Lena couldn't identify. Mrs. Brennan was a round, flour-dusted woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She took one look at Lena and pointed to a stool in the corner. Sit. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to anyone. And for heaven's sake, stay out of the way. Lena sat. For 2 hours, she watched the kitchen staff move like a well-oiled machine, chopping, stirring, plating, shouting orders in a language of culinary shorthand she didn't understand. Her stomach growled. She ignored it. At 1:47, Mrs. Brennan finally acknowledged her again. You're the girl from this morning. Yes, ma'am. Caused quite a stir. Lena's cheeks burned. I didn't mean to. Vivian Ashcroft is a viper, Mrs. Brennan said bluntly. But she's also the mayor's daughter and Mr. Bennett does business with the mayor, so when she complains, which she will, it becomes a problem. Lena's heart sank. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You didn't do anything wrong. Mrs. Brennan wiped her hands on her apron. But wrong doesn't matter when money's involved. You understand? Lena understood. She understood perfectly. So, Mrs. Brennan continued, I'm going to give you some advice, free of charge. Walk out that door. Go back to town. Find work somewhere else. There is nowhere else. The words came out flat, honest, desperate. Mrs. Brennan's expression softened, just a fraction. How bad? $3 to my name. Rent's due Friday. I haven't eaten a real meal in 2 weeks. Mrs. Brennan sighed, reached into a drawer, pulled out a small cloth bundle and handed it to Lena. Bread, cheese, bit of ham, don't argue. Lena's throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me, just listen. Mrs. Brennan leaned closer. Mr. Bennett's a good man. Fair, pays well, doesn't tolerate cruelty. But he's also hard. He doesn't forgive mistakes, doesn't give second chances. And if you cross him, even by accident, you'll regret it. I won't, Lena said quickly. I just need work. I'll do anything. Anything? Yes. Mrs. Brennan studied her, long enough that Lena started to squirm. We'll see, the older woman said finally. Interview's at 2. Don't be late. Lena wasn't late. She was 7 minutes early, standing in the hallway outside Cole Bennett's study, clutching her bag and trying not to look as terrified as she felt. The door opened. Harrison, the older man from the terrace, emerged, his face tight with frustration. He brushed past Lena without a glance and disappeared down the hall. Miss Whitaker. Lena turned. Cole stood in the doorway, still in that charcoal suit, still radiating that same cold authority. "Come in." The study was all dark wood and leather. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, windows that overlooked the valley. It smelled like whiskey and old paper and something faintly medicinal. Cole gestured to a chair. "Sit." Lena sat. Cole didn't. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the land. "You've worked in service before," he said. "Yes, sir. 3 years at the Langston Hotel. Housekeeping." "Why'd you leave?" "They closed. Bank foreclosed." "And before that?" "Seamstress. At the textile mill." "Same story?" Lena hesitated. "Yes, sir." Cole turned, looked at her, really looked. "You're young, healthy, capable. Why not go west? Find work in the city?" "I tried. There's nothing. Not for someone like me." "Someone like you." Someone without references, without family, without... She stopped, swallowed. "Without connections." Cole's expression didn't change. "You have no one." It wasn't a question. Lena shook her head. "Parents?" "Dead, both of them, years ago." "Siblings?" "No." "Friends?" Lena's throat tightened. "I did. Once. But when you can't pay your debts, people stop calling." Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he moved to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. "The position is live-in," he said. "Room and board included. 12-hour shifts. 6 days a week. You'll clean, serve, assist Mrs. Brennan as needed. Pay is $30 a month." Lena's breath caught. $30? That was more than she'd made at the mill. "I'll take it," she said quickly. "You haven't heard the rules." "I don't care. I'll take it." Cole's eyes narrowed. "You should care." He pulled a sheet of paper from the folder, set it on the desk. "Rule 1, no personal guests, ever. Rule 2, no romantic entanglements with staff or visitors. Rule 3, discretion. What you see, what you hear, stays in this house. Rule 4, if I tell you to do something, you do it. No questions, no arguments." Lena nodded. "I understand. Do you?" "Yes, sir." Cole studied her. Then he picked up a pen, signed the bottom of the paper, slid it toward her. "Sign." Lena's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. She didn't read the contract, didn't care what it said. She just signed. Cole took the paper back, filed it away. "Mrs. Brennan will show you to your quarters. You start tomorrow." Lena stood, dizzy with relief. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I won't let you down." "See that you don't." She turned toward the door. "Miss Whitaker?" She stopped, looked back. Cole's expression was unreadable. "The guests this afternoon. Did they upset you?" Lena blinked. No, I mean, yes, but it doesn't matter." "It does." "Why?" Cole didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, like he was weighing something. "Because this world eats people like you alive," he said quietly, "and I have no interest in watching it happen under my roof." Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and left. Her room was small, clean. A bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over the stables. It was the nicest place she'd slept in months. She unpacked her bag, 2 dresses, a nightgown, a hairbrush, a book she'd read so many times the spine was cracked, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe. She had work, a roof, food. She was going to be okay. She wasn't okay. The next morning, she woke to shouting. Lena bolted upright, heart pounding. The sun was barely up. She threw on her dress and hurried into the hall. Other staff were already gathering near the main staircase, whispering urgently. "What's happening?" Lena asked a young maid. "Inspectors," the girl hissed. "Federal. They're saying Mr. Bennett's been hiding assets, dodging taxes. There's talk of..." She paled. "There's talk of prison." Lena's stomach dropped. Below, in the foyer, she could see Cole. He stood surrounded by 3 men in dark suits, his expression carved from stone. "This is absurd," Cole said, voice low and dangerous. "I've submitted every record, every ledger, every receipt." Then you won't mind if we take another look, one of the men said smoothly. I mind the implication. No implication, Mr. Bennett, just procedure. Cole's jaw tightened. Fine, search. You won't find anything. We'll see. The men dispersed. Cole stood alone in the foyer, hands clenched, and for the first time since Lena had met him, he looked tired. The search lasted hours. Lena tried to work, tried to stay out of the way, but the house was in chaos. Inspectors rifling through desks, staff whispering, and over it all, a growing sense of dread. By mid-afternoon, the inspectors had found nothing, but that didn't stop them from lingering. Quite the operation you've got here, one of them said, standing on the terrace with a glass of water, surveying the land like he owned it. Must be profitable. It is, Cole said evenly, and yet the records show some inconsistencies, such as your marriage, for one. Lena, passing by with a tray of glasses, froze. My marriage, Cole repeated, voice flat. Yes, you're listed as married, but there's no record of a spouse, no joint filings, no secondary name on any property deeds. Cole's expression didn't change. My wife prefers privacy. How convenient. The air went cold. What are you implying? Cole asked quietly. Just that it's unusual. A man of your stature, married, and yet no one's ever seen her. She travels. For 2 years? Silence. The inspector smiled. Forgive me, Mr. Bennett. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. Cole said nothing. The inspector set down his glass. We'll be in touch. He and his colleagues left. Cole stood on the terrace, utterly still, and Lena realized, too late, that she'd been holding her breath, saying, "Mustammt." That evening, the house was silent. Lena finished her shift and retreated to her room, but sleep didn't come. She kept replaying the conversation, the inspector's tone, Cole's face. No record of a spouse. Whatever Cole was hiding, it was big enough to bring federal agents to his door, and if they found it... A knock. Lena sat up. Yes? Miss Whitaker. Mr. Bennett wants to see you. Her heart sank. She dressed quickly and followed the messenger to Cole's study. He was standing by the window again, same position as yesterday, like he hadn't moved. Sit, he said. Lena sat. Cole turned, looked at her. I'm going to ask you a question, he said, and I need you to answer honestly. Lena nodded. How desperate are you? She blinked. I don't understand. For work, for money, for survival. How far would you go? Lena's pulse quickened. Mr. Bennett, I don't answer the question. She swallowed. As far as I have to. Cole nodded slowly, walked to his desk, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. Drink. I don't drink. Lena drank. It burned. She coughed. Cole downed his in one swallow. I have a problem, he said, a very specific problem, and I believe you can help me solve it. How? Cole set down his glass, looked her dead in the eye. I need a wife. Lena's brain stuttered. What? Not a real one. A temporary arrangement. 1 year. You play the role, we maintain the illusion, and when the time's up, we dissolve it quietly. Why? Because if I don't produce a wife, a real, living, breathing wife, within the next 2 weeks, I lose everything. Lena's head spun. I don't understand. Why would... My father's will, Cole said flatly. It stipulates that I must be married to inherit full control of the estate. I thought I had time. I didn't. And now the federal government is sniffing around, looking for cracks. If they find out I lied on my tax filings about my marital status, they'll bury me. But you can't just... I can. And I am. Cole leaned forward. I'm offering you a deal, Miss Whitaker. 1 year. You live here as my wife. Attend events. Smile for photographs. Play the part. In exchange, I'll pay you $5,000. Up front, plus room and board, plus a full discharge of any debts you owe. Lena's mouth went dry. $5,000. That was That was more money than she'd see in 10 years. Why me? She whispered. Because you're desperate. Because you're alone. Because you have nothing to lose. Cole's eyes were cold, calculating. And because if you say no, you'll be back on the street by Friday. Lena's hands shook. This is insane, she said. Yes. It's illegal. Technically, no. We'll sign a contract, a real one, legally binding. The marriage will be legitimate on paper. And when it ends? Annulment. Quiet. Clean. You walk away with enough money to start over, anywhere you want. Lena stared at him, at this cold, calculating man who was offering her a lifeline wrapped in a lie. What if I say no? She asked. Then you leave, tonight, and we never speak of this again. Lena's throat tightened. She thought of the boarding house, the landlord's threats, the empty pantry, the cold, gnawing fear that had followed her for months. She thought of $3.47, and she thought of $5,000. 1 year, she said quietly. 1 year. And then I'm free. Completely. Lena closed her eyes, took a breath. Okay. Cole didn't smile, didn't look relieved. He just nodded. We leave for the courthouse tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what she'd agreed to. A fake marriage. To a man she didn't know. For money. It was reckless. Stupid. Possibly the worst decision she'd ever made. But it was also survival, and survival, she'd learned, didn't care about morality. The courthouse was a squat gray building that smelled like dust and old varnish. Lena wore her blue dress. Cole wore a black suit. They stood in front of a clerk who looked bored out of his mind. Names? Cole Andrew Bennett, Lena Marie Whitaker. Rings? Cole produced 2 plain gold bands from his pocket, slid one onto Lena's finger. It was slightly too large. She slid the other onto his. It fit perfectly. Witnesses? 2 men Lena didn't recognize stepped forward, signed the register. By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Lena's heart stopped. Cole leaned in, pressed a brief, cold kiss to her lips. It lasted 2 seconds. It felt like eternity. Congratulations, the clerk said flatly. Next. And just like that, Lena Whitaker became Lena Bennett. They drove back to the ranch in silence. When they arrived, Cole led her to a different wing of the house. A suite. Massive. Elegant. 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting room. This is yours, he said, gesturing to the left door. That's mine. We'll maintain separate quarters. For appearances, we'll share meals, attend events together, but otherwise, our lives remain separate. Understood. Cole handed her an envelope. 5,000, as promised. Lena took it. Her hands shook. One more thing, Cole said. No one can know this is fake, not the staff, not the inspectors, not anyone. If this falls apart, we both go down. I won't tell anyone. See that you don't. He turned to leave. Cole. He stopped, looked back. It was the first time she'd said his name. Thank you, she said quietly. Cole's expression flickered, just for a second. Don't thank me yet, he said, and he left her standing in a room full of silk and lies, holding an envelope full of blood money. The first week was strange. Lena learned to navigate the house, learned the staff's names, learned to smile when Cole introduced her as his wife. This is Lena, he'd say, voice smooth as glass. We've been married quietly for some time. She prefers to stay out of the public eye. People believed him, or pretended to. Lena couldn't tell which. At night, she'd retreat to her room and count the money. $5,000. She could leave, right now, take the money and run. But she didn't, because a deal was a deal. And Lena Whitaker, Lena Bennett, always kept her word. 2 weeks after the wedding, Cole hosted a dinner. 20 guests. All important. Politicians. Business owners. People who smiled with their mouths and calculated with their eyes. Lena wore a dress Cole had bought her. Emerald green, silk. It fit like it had been made for her. She sat at his right hand. smiled when spoken to, laughed at jokes she didn't find funny. And across the table, Vivian Ashcroft watched her like a hawk. "So, Lena," Vivian said sweetly, "Cole tells us you've been traveling. Where did you go?" Lena's mind went blank. "Europe," Cole said smoothly. "Paris, Vienna. She's quite the art enthusiast." Vivian's smile sharpened. "How wonderful. And what's your favorite piece?" Lena had never been to a museum in her life. She's modest," Cole interrupted, "doesn't like to boast." Vivian's eyes gleamed. Of course. The conversation moved on, but Lena's heart was still racing. Later, after the guests had left, Cole found her in the sitting room. "You did well," he said. "I almost blew it." "But you didn't." Lena looked at him, at this cold, controlled man who'd bought her like a prop. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. Cole's expression hardened. "I told you." "No, the real reason. Not the will. Not the taxes. Why do you need people to think you're married?" Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to the window, stared out at the dark valley. "Because a man with a family is trustworthy," he said quietly. "A man alone is dangerous. And I've spent 10 years building something that people want to tear down. This," he gestured vaguely, "this marriage, it makes me palatable. You're using me as a shield." "Yes." At least he was honest. Lena stood, walked to the door. "For what it's worth," she said, "I don't think you're dangerous." Cole's laugh was bitter. "Then you're not paying attention." The days blurred together. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Always together, always performing. Lena learned to read Cole's moods. The tightness in his jaw when he was angry, the way his eyes went distant when he was worried, the rare, fleeting moments when something almost like warmth flickered across his face. She learned that he took his coffee black, that he hated small talk, that he read every night before bed, history, mostly, biographies of men who'd built empires and lost them. She learned that he was lonely, and she learned that he'd never, ever admit it. 1 month in, the inspectors returned. This time, they wanted to meet Lena. She sat in Cole's study, hands folded in her lap, while 3 men in dark suits asked her questions. "How did you meet?" "At a charity event in the city." "When did you marry?" 2 years ago, quietly. We both preferred it that way." "And you've been traveling since?" "Yes, Europe, Asia. My husband is very generous." The lead inspector smiled. "And you're happy?" Lena looked at Cole. He was standing by the window, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Very," she said. The inspector's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Good. That's good." They left an hour later. Cole didn't speak until they were gone. "They don't believe you," he said. "I know. If they dig deeper, they won't find anything. We covered our tracks." Cole turned, looked at her. "You're getting good at this," he said. Lena didn't know if that was a compliment or an accusation. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs, found Cole in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. "No." "Join the club." Lena sat in the chair across from him. "Do you ever regret it?" "What?" "This, the lie, all of it." Cole was quiet for a long time. "Every day," he said finally. "Then why keep going?" "Because the alternative is worse." Lena wanted to ask what that meant, but something in his expression stopped her. Instead, she said, "Tell me about your father." Cole's eyes darkened. "No." "Why not?" "Because it's none of your business. We're married. On paper." "Still." Cole drained his glass, set it down hard enough to rattle. "He was a bastard," he said flatly. "Built this place on the backs of people he didn't care about, died rich and hated, and left me an empire with so many strings attached I'll never be free of it. Is that why you're so cold?" Cole's smile was sharp. "Say it. I know what people think." "I was going to say careful." Cole blinked. "You're careful," Lena continued, "with everything. Your words, your actions, your feelings, like you're afraid of what happens if you let go." Cole stared at her. You don't know me, he said quietly. No, but I'm learning. For a moment, something shifted in his expression, something raw, vulnerable. Then it was gone. Go to bed, Lena. Cole, go. Lena stood, walked to the door. For what it's worth, she said softly, I don't think your father's mistakes are yours. Cole didn't respond, but when she glanced back, he was staring at the floor, and he looked lost. The season turned. Autumn bled into winter. The valley filled with snow, and Lena settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Almost. Because every smile was rehearsed, every touch was calculated, every word was a performance. And somewhere along the way, the lines started to blur. She'd catch herself laughing at something Cole said, really laughing. Not for the cameras, not for the guests, just because. She'd noticed the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way his hand would linger on her back when they walked into a room. Small things. Meaningless things. Except they didn't feel meaningless anymore. Tots. 3 months in, Cole took her to a gala. It was a glittering, suffocating affair. Champagne, crystal. People in clothes that cost more than most people earned in a year. Lena wore red, a dress Cole had insisted on. It fit like a second skin. You look beautiful, he'd said when she'd emerged from her room. It was the first time he'd ever said that. Lena's heart had stuttered. At the gala, they danced. It was expected, part of the performance. But when Cole pulled her close, his hand warm against her back, Lena forgot about the cameras, forgot about the lie. She just felt. You're trembling, Cole murmured. I'm cold. Liar. Lena looked up, met his eyes. They were still gray, still storm dark. But there was something else there now, something she couldn't name. Cole, don't. Don't what? Don't look at me like that. Like what? Cole's jaw tightened. Like this is real. Lena's breath caught. It's not, Cole said quietly. It can't be. Why not? Because I'm paying you. The words hit like a slap. Lena stepped back, out of his arms, out of the warmth. Right, she said. Of course. Cole's expression flickered. Lena, I need some air. She walked away, and Cole let her. Lena stood on the balcony, gripping the railing, trying not to cry. Stupid. She was so stupid. This was a job, a transaction, nothing more. Lena? She turned. Vivian Ashcroft stood in the doorway, glass in hand, smile sharp as a blade. Trouble in paradise? Vivian purred. No. You sure? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a woman who's just realized she's in over her head. Lena's stomach dropped. I don't know what you mean. Vivian stepped closer. Cole Bennett doesn't do love. He does business. And if you think you're anything more than a convenient prop, you don't know anything about us. Don't I? Vivian's smile widened. I've known Cole for years, and I've never seen him with a woman, not once. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he's married to a nobody? She laughed. Please, whatever deal you made, I hope he's paying you well. Lena's blood went cold. Careful, Vivian, a voice said from behind. Both women turned. Cole stood in the doorway, eyes like ice. You're drunk, he said flatly. I'm honest, Vivian shot back. You're leaving. Cole, now. Vivian's face flushed, but she left. Cole turned to Lena. Are you all right? Fine. Lena, I'm fine. She wasn't, and they both knew it. The ride home was silent. When they arrived, Lena went straight to her room. She peeled off the red dress, threw it on the floor, and sat on the edge of the bed, head in her hands. A knock. Go away, Lena said. The door opened anyway. Cole stood there, still in his suit, tie loosened. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. Lena. You were right. Lena looked up, eyes burning. This isn't real. It's a job, a transaction, and I'm an idiot for forgetting that. Cole's expression cracked. That's not what I meant. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. Cole stepped into the room. closed the door. I said it because I'm a coward, because I'm terrified of what happens if... He stopped, took a breath. If this becomes real. Lena's heart pounded. Why? She whispered. Because everything I touch breaks, Cole said quietly. And I won't let that happen to you. Lena stood, crossed the room, stood in front of him. You don't get to decide that, she said. Lena, I'm not some fragile thing you need to protect. I'm a grown woman who made a choice. And if I want to... She stopped, swallowed. If I want to care about you, that's my choice, not yours. Cole stared at her, and then slowly he reached out, cupped her face. You're going to regret this, he said. Probably. I'm not a good man. I don't believe that. Cole's thumb brushed her cheek. You should. Make me. For one breathless moment, Cole didn't move, and then he kissed her. It wasn't like the courthouse, wasn't cold or calculated or performative. It was raw, desperate, real. Lena's hands fisted in his shirt, pulled him closer, and for the first time in months, the lie fell away. All that was left was the truth. They didn't talk about it. The next morning, Cole was gone before Lena woke. She found a note on the sitting room table. Had to leave early, business, back tonight. See, Lena folded the note, tucked it into her pocket, and tried not to think about the fact that she'd fallen for a man who'd bought her. But life, as it turned out, had other plans. Because 2 days later, a letter arrived. Federal seal. Official letterhead. Cole read it in silence, then set it down. They're auditing everything, he said. The estate, the finances, the marriage. Lena's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means they're looking for cracks, and if they find them, they won't. They will. Cole looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked afraid. I need you to be ready, he said quietly. For what? For the end. The auditors arrived on a Tuesday morning, their black sedans cutting through the snow like knives through silk. Lena watched from the upstairs window as 3 men in identical dark coats emerged, briefcases in hand, expressions carved from granite. They moved with the mechanical precision of people who'd done this 1,000 times before, people who knew how to dismantle lives with paperwork and polite questions. Cole stood in the foyer below, shoulders squared, hands clasped behind his back. From this distance, he looked calm, controlled, but Lena had learned to read the tension in his jaw, the slight rigidity in his posture. He was afraid, and if Cole Bennett was afraid, they were in serious trouble. Mrs. Brennan appeared at Lena's elbow, wringing her hands. They're going to tear this place apart, she whispered. Mark my words. They'll find something. They always do. There's nothing to find, Lena said, more to convince herself than the housekeeper. Isn't there? Lena's stomach twisted. She turned away from the window, walked quickly to her room, and sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking. The marriage certificate was real. The signatures were real. The wedding had been legally binding. On paper, everything was legitimate. But the truth underneath, the contract, the money, the arrangement, that was a different story. And if the auditors dug deep enough, asked the right questions, found the wrong receipts? A knock pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. Come in. Cole entered, closing the door behind him. He looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, small cracks in the armor he usually wore so perfectly. They want to interview you, he said without preamble. Lena's heart lurched. When? This afternoon, 2:00. What do they want to know? Everything. Cole crossed to the window, stared out at the valley. How we met, when we fell in love, where we got married, what our life together looks like. He paused. They're going to try to trip you up, find inconsistencies. I'll stick to the story. It's not enough. Cole turned to face her. They're not idiots, Lena. They can smell a lie from a mile away. And if you hesitate, if you stumble, if you look uncertain for even a second, I won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Lena stood crossed to him. Cole, I've been lying for 4 months. At dinners, at parties, to your friends, to strangers. I know this story inside and out. This is different. These men are professionals. They're trained to. I said I won't mess up. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. She softened it. Trust me, please. Cole's eyes searched hers. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle, so unexpectedly tender, that Lena's breath caught. I do trust you, he said quietly. That's what terrifies me. Before she could respond, he dropped his hand and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Lena alone with the weight of what he'd just said. She pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her heart hammer beneath her ribs. This wasn't supposed to happen. Wasn't supposed to feel like this. But it did. And there was no going back now. The interview took place in Cole's study. The lead auditor, a lean man with wire-rimmed glasses and the flat, patient expression of someone who'd heard every lie ever told, sat across from Lena, a notepad open on his lap. Mrs. Bennett, he began, voice neutral, thank you for speaking with us. Of course. Lena folded her hands in her lap, forced herself to meet his eyes. I want to help however I can. Good. Let's start simple. How did you and Mr. Bennett meet? Lena had rehearsed this 100 times. At a charity gala in the city, 3 years ago. He was giving a speech about land conservation. I was there with a friend. And you spoke to him? Not that night. I was too nervous. She smiled, let a touch of shyness creep into her voice. But he noticed me. Sent a note to my table asking if I'd have dinner with him the next evening. And you said yes. Eventually, I made him ask twice. A small laugh. I didn't want to seem too eager. The auditor didn't smile. When did you marry? 2 years ago, June 15th. It was small, private. Just us and 2 witnesses. Why private? Cole doesn't like spectacle, and She hesitated, let her gaze drop. I didn't have family to invite. It felt easier this way. No family at all? Both my parents passed when I was young. I have no siblings. The auditor made a note. And after the wedding? We traveled, Europe mostly. Cole had business in London and Paris. I tagged along. For how long? Almost a year? That's quite a honeymoon, Lena smiled. Cole is very generous. And when you returned? I stayed here, at the ranch. Doing what? The question was casual, too casual. Lena's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. Managing the household, hosting events, supporting my husband. You don't work? Being married to Cole is work, she said lightly. Trust me. The auditor's expression didn't change. Do you love him? Lena blinked. I'm sorry. Your husband. Do you love him? The question hung in the air like a blade. Lena knew what she was supposed to say, knew the script, the rehearsed answer, but when she opened her mouth, what came out was the truth. Yes, she said quietly. I do. The auditor watched her, waiting. He's not an easy man, Lena continued, words spilling out before she could stop them. He's stubborn, guarded. He doesn't let people in. But when he does, she paused. When he does, you realize there's so much more to him than the world sees. He's kind, he's loyal. He'd burn the world down to protect the people he cares about. Her voice softened. So yes, I love him. The auditor wrote something down. And does he love you? Lena's throat tightened. She thought of Cole's hand on her face, his whispered confession, the kiss that had shattered every wall between them. You'd have to ask him, she said. The auditor closed his notepad. Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. That will be all for now. Lena stood on shaking legs. Is there anything else you need? We'll let you know. She left the study, walked down the hall, and barely made it to the bathroom before her knees gave out. She sank onto the cold tile floor, pressed her hands to her face, and tried to breathe. She'd just told a federal auditor she loved Cole Bennett. And the worst part? She'd meant it. That evening, Cole found her in the library. She was curled in an armchair, staring at a book she wasn't reading. How did it go? He asked. Fine. Lena. She looked up. I said it went fine. Cole studied her, then he crossed to the liquor cabinet, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed her one. Drink. I don't want to... drink. Lena took the glass, sipped. The burn was almost comforting. Cole sat in the chair across from her. What did they ask? The usual, how we met, when we married, why we kept it quiet. And? And I told them the story, exactly like we planned. Cole's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Lena's pulse spiked. I'm not... Yes, you are. You do this thing when you're lying. Your left hand twitches. Lena looked down. Her left hand was indeed twitching. She set down her glass. He asked if I loved you. Cole went very still. What did you say? Lena met his gaze. The truth. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Cole stood abruptly, walked to the window, braced his hands against the frame. You shouldn't have done that, he said, voice tight. Why not? It's believable. It sells the story. Because it's not part of the deal. Maybe the deal changed. Cole's shoulders tensed. Lena, or maybe it was never just a deal to begin with. She stood, crossed to him. Cole, look at me. He didn't. Look at me. Slowly he turned. His eyes were storm dark, haunted. You don't know what you're saying, he said quietly. Yes, I do. No, you don't. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. You think you love me, but you love the idea of me. The man who saved you, who gave you a way out. That's not real, Lena. That's gratitude. Don't tell me what I feel. Then don't lie to yourself. The words stung. Lena's hands clenched. You're scared. I'm realistic. No, you're terrified. Because, for the first time in your life, you care about someone and you don't know how to handle it. Cole's jaw tightened. I care about a lot of people. No, you don't. You protect people. You provide for people. But you don't let them in. You don't let them matter. She took a breath. Except me. You're wrong. Am I? Lena stepped closer. Then why are you still here? Why didn't you walk out the second I said I loved you? Cole's hands clenched. Because I'm trying to do the right thing. Which is what? Push me away? Convince yourself this is all fake? Yes. Why? Because if it's real... He stopped. Took a ragged breath. If it's real and they take it away, I won't survive it. The confession hit Lena like a blow. She reached up, cupped his face. Then don't let them take it, she whispered. Cole's eyes closed. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Lena. She kissed him. It was different from the first time. Slower, softer, less desperate, more deliberate. And when Cole's arms came around her, pulling her close, Lena felt something crack open inside her chest. This wasn't gratitude. This wasn't a transaction. This was real. And it was terrifying. They didn't sleep that night. They sat in the library, side by side on the couch, talking in low voices about things they'd never said out loud. Cole told her about his father, about the beatings, the impossible expectations, the will that had turned inheritance into a noose. Lena told him about her parents, the accident, the years in foster care, the loneliness that had followed her like a shadow. I used to think I was broken, she said quietly, like there was something wrong with me, because everyone I cared about left. They didn't leave, Cole said. They were taken. Same result. No, it's not. He looked at her. Leaving is a choice. Being taken is a tragedy. You can't blame yourself for tragedy. Lena's throat tightened. Do you believe that? For you? Yes. But not for yourself. Cole's smile was bitter. I'm a work in progress. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. Aren't we all? They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling softly. What happens if we lose? Lena asked eventually. Cole's hand tightened on hers. We won't. But if we do, then we lose together. It wasn't a reassurance, but it was honest. And somehow, that was enough. The auditors stayed for a week. They went through every file, every ledger, every receipt. They interviewed the staff. They questioned vendors. They combed through tax returns dating back a decade. And they found nothing, because there was nothing to find. The marriage was legal, the records were clean, and Cole Bennett, for all his secrets, had covered his tracks perfectly. On the 8th day, the lead auditor called Cole into the study. Lena waited in the hallway, heart in her throat. 15 minutes later, Cole emerged. His expression was unreadable. "Well?" Lena asked. Cole looked at her, and then, slowly, he smiled. "They're dropping the investigation." Lena's knees nearly buckled. "What?" "No evidence of fraud, no inconsistencies. As far as they're concerned, we're exactly what we claim to be. So we're free. For now." Lena let out a shaky laugh. "For now?" "They'll keep an eye on us, but unless something new comes up, we're in the clear." Relief crashed over her like a wave. She threw her arms around Cole, buried her face in his chest. He held her tight. "We did it," he murmured. "We did." For a moment, everything was perfect, and then Cole pulled back, his expression shifting. "Lena, there's something I need to tell you." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "The will, my father's will. It has a clause." "What kind of clause?" Cole hesitated. "If I'm married for less than 5 years, the estate reverts to a trust. I lose control." Lena's blood went cold. 5 years? "Yes, but we agreed to one." "I know. So," she stepped back. "So what are you saying?" Cole's jaw tightened. "I'm saying we need to renegotiate." "Renegotiate?" "I'll double your payment, triple it, whatever you want, but I need you to stay." Lena stared at him. "You're asking me to extend the contract?" "Yes." "For 4 more years?" "Yes." Her chest felt tight. "Cole, this isn't... We can't just... I know it's a lot. I know it's not what we agreed, but I don't have a choice." "There's always a choice. Not for me." His voice cracked. "Lena, if I lose this place, I lose everything. My livelihood, my legacy, everything my father built. Your father was a bastard. You said so yourself. That doesn't mean I want to watch his empire crumble." Lena's hands clenched. "So what am I? Just another asset to protect?" "No, you're..." He stopped. "You're more than that." "Then prove it." "How?" "By not making this about money." Cole went silent. Lena's throat tightened. "You just told me you care about me, that this is real, and now you're... What? Buying me for another 4 years?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Cole didn't answer, and Lena felt something inside her shatter. "I need to think," she said quietly. "Lena, please, just give me time." She walked away before he could respond. She spent the next 2 days avoiding him. It wasn't hard. The estate was big enough that she could disappear into unused wings, the library, the gardens. Cole didn't push, didn't corner her. He just waited. And that somehow made it worse, because she wanted him to fight, wanted him to storm into her room and tell her he needed her, not the contract, needed her, not the arrangement, but he didn't. And the silence stretched between them like a chasm. On the 3rd day, Mrs. Brennan found her in the garden. "You're going to catch your death out here," the older woman said, wrapping a shawl around Lena's shoulders. "I'm fine." "You're freezing." Lena didn't argue. Mrs. Brennan sat beside her on the bench. "He's miserable, you know." "Good." "Lena, what do you want me to say? That I'm happy he's asking me to sign my life away for another 4 years?" "I want you to think about why he's asking." Lena's jaw tightened. "Because he needs me." "Yes." "As a prop?" "No." Mrs. Brennan turned to her. "As a partner." Lena looked at her. "What?" Cole Bennett has spent his entire life alone, building walls, keeping people at arm's length. And then you walked into his life and turned everything upside down. She smiled softly. He doesn't know how to ask for what he really wants, so he falls back on what he knows. Contracts, deals, money. That's not enough. I know, and deep down, so does he. Mrs. Brennan patted her hand. Give him time. He'll figure it out. And if he doesn't, then you leave. And he spends the rest of his life regretting it. Button. That night, Lena found a letter slipped under her door. She recognized Cole's handwriting immediately. Her hand shook as she opened it. Lena, I'm not good at this. At saying what I feel, at being vulnerable. My father beat that out of me a long time ago, but you deserve better than silence. You asked me to prove that this isn't about money, that you're more than an asset. And you're right, you are. You're the first person in my life who's ever made me want to be better, kinder, softer. You make me believe that maybe I'm not my father's son, that maybe I can build something that isn't built on fear and control. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a husband, a real one, but I want to try. If you'll let me. I'm not asking you to stay because of the contract. I'm asking because I can't imagine my life without you in it. If that's not enough, I understand. And I'll let you go. But if there's even a chance, please stay. See, Lena read the letter 3 times, and then she folded it carefully, pressed it to her chest, and cried. She found him in his study, sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. Cole? He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. I'll stay, she said. He stood slowly. Lena. But not because of the contract, not because of the money. Then why? She crossed to him, took his hands. Because I love you. And because I hope, you love me too. Cole's breath hitched. I do. Then say it. I love you. His voice cracked. I love you, and I'm terrified, and I don't know how to do this, but I want to, with you. Lena's eyes burned. No more contracts. No more contracts. No more lies. No more lies. Just us, figuring it out. Cole pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. Just us, he whispered. And when he kissed her, it felt like a promise. They burned the original contract that night, stood in front of the fireplace, watched the paper curl and blacken, and let the weight of it disappear into ash. No going back now, Cole said. Good. He turned to her, cupped her face. Are you sure about this? Are you? I've never been more sure of anything. Lena smiled. Then we're doing this. We're doing this. They went to bed together that night, not as strangers bound by a deal, but as 2 people choosing each other over and over, despite the fear. And for the first time in her life, Lena felt like she was home. The next few months were a strange kind of bliss. They stopped performing, stopped pretending. They held hands at dinner because they wanted to, not because someone was watching. They laughed at inside jokes. They argued about stupid things, like whether coffee should be drunk black or with cream, or if winter was beautiful or just miserable. They learned each other, slowly, carefully. Cole learned that Lena hummed when she was concentrating, that she read romance novels and cried at the endings, that she was terrified of thunderstorms but would never admit it. Lena learned that Cole was a terrible cook but insisted on trying, that he had a scar on his ribs from a riding accident when he was 12, that he wrote poetry he'd never show anyone. They weren't perfect, they fought, they stumbled, but they stayed. And slowly, the estate that had felt like a stage became a home. Bam. But the world, as it turned out, wasn't done with them yet. 6 months after the audit ended, Vivian Ashcroft reappeared. She arrived unannounced, sweeping into the estate like she owned it, her smile sharp and her eyes sharper. Lena, darling, she cooed, how wonderful to see you. Lena, who'd been arranging flowers in the foyer, forced a smile. Vivian, what a surprise. I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I was in the area and thought I'd say hello. Of course. Cole's in his study. Actually, I wanted to talk to you. Lena's stomach tightened. Oh? Vivian's smile widened. Just girl talk, you understand. Lena didn't, but she nodded anyway. They sat in the drawing room, tea cooling between them, while Vivian talked in circles about nothing, the weather, the upcoming gala, a new dress she'd bought. And then, casually, she dropped the bomb. I heard something interesting the other day, Vivian said, stirring her tea, about you and Cole. Lena's pulse quickened. What kind of something? Oh, just rumors. You know how people talk. Vivian's eyes glittered. They're saying your marriage isn't legitimate. Lena's blood went cold. That's absurd. Is it? Vivian leaned forward. Because I did some digging, and it's funny. There's no record of you before 3 years ago. No employment history, no family. It's like you just appeared. I've had a difficult life. I don't owe anyone an explanation. No, but you do owe the federal government one, especially if you've committed fraud. Lena's hands clenched. I haven't committed anything. Then you won't mind if I share what I've found with the right people. Vivian, unless, of course, you'd like to make this go away. Lena's stomach churned. What do you want? Vivian's smile was poison. Cole. Excuse me? I want him to end this ridiculous charade and marry someone appropriate, someone who can actually help his career, someone like me. Lena laughed bitterly. You're insane. I'm practical. You leave quietly, I stay quiet. Simple. And if I don't, then I go to the authorities, and you and Cole both go to prison. Lena's vision blurred. He won't choose you. He will if it means saving you. And with that, Vivian stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked out, leaving Lena alone in the drawing room, heart pounding, world crumbling. Because Vivian was right, Cole would sacrifice everything to protect her, even if it meant losing her. Lena didn't tell Cole about Vivian's threat. Not that night. Not the next morning when they had breakfast together, his hand warm over hers on the table. Not during the walk through the snow-covered grounds where he pointed out the places he'd played as a child, his voice soft with memory. She told herself she was protecting him, that if he knew, he'd do something reckless, something that would destroy everything they'd built. But the truth was simpler and far more cowardly. She was afraid that Vivian was right, that Cole would choose to save her, even if it meant sacrificing himself, that he'd walk away from her to keep her safe, and she'd lose the only home she'd ever really had. So she carried the weight alone, feeling it grow heavier with each passing hour. 3 days after Vivian's visit, Lena was in the library when Mrs. Brennan found her staring blankly at an open book. You haven't turned that page in 20 minutes, the older woman said. Lena startled. I was just thinking. About what? Everything. Nothing. The way Vivian's smile had looked like a knife, the way Cole had kissed her that morning, gentle and unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. Nothing important, Lena lied. Mrs. Brennan sat down across from her, eyes sharp. You're a terrible liar, dear. Always have been. Lena's throat tightened. I'm fine. And I'm the Queen of England. Mrs. Brennan folded her hands. Whatever it is, you need to tell him. Tell who what? Don't play dumb. You need to tell Cole what's eating you alive. Lena looked away. I can't. Why not? Because if I do, he'll try to fix it, and some things can't be fixed. Mrs. Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned forward. When I was young, I made a mistake. A big one. And I was so afraid of what my husband would think, I hid it from him for months, nearly destroyed our marriage. What happened? I finally told him. And you know what he said? Mrs. Brennan's eyes softened. He said, we'll figure it out together. And we did. This is different. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're making the same mistake I did. You're trying to carry something alone because you're afraid. But marriage, real marriage, isn't about carrying things alone. It's about sharing the weight. Lena's eyes burned. What if the weight breaks us? Then at least you'll break together. The words settled into Lena's chest like stones. She wanted to believe them, wanted to trust that Cole would stand with her, not just in front of her. But fear had teeth, and it had sunk them deep. I'll think about it, Lena said quietly. Mrs. Brennan patted her hand. Don't think too long, dear. Secrets have a way of rotting from the inside out. After she left, Lena sat alone in the library, book forgotten, staring at nothing. She knew Mrs. Brennan was right, knew that keeping this from Cole was dangerous, maybe even stupid. But the alternative, watching him sacrifice everything for her again, felt worse. So she stayed silent, and the rot began. That evening, Cole found her on the terrace, wrapped in a heavy coat, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. You're quiet tonight, he said, coming to stand beside her. Just tired. You've been tired a lot lately. Lena forced a smile. Maybe I'm getting old. You're 26. Ancient. Cole didn't laugh. He turned to face her, hands in his pockets, expression serious. Lena, if something's wrong, nothing's wrong. Don't lie to me. The words were soft, but they hit like a blow. Lena's chest tightened. I'm not lying. Yes, you are. You've been different since Vivian's visit. Distant, like you're somewhere else. I'm right here. Are you? Lena looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Cole, please. Not tonight. When then? Because you can't keep shutting me out. I'm not shutting you out. Then what do you call this? Self-preservation. The words came out sharper than she intended. Cole's expression flickered, hurt, confusion, frustration all warring for dominance. From what? He asked quietly. Lena's hands clenched. She wanted to tell him, wanted to let the words spill out, let him carry the weight with her. But the image of Vivian's smile kept flashing in her mind. The threat. The ultimatum. I just need some space, Lena said finally. Space. Yes. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, jaw tight. Fine, if that's what you need. He turned and walked back into the house, leaving Lena alone on the terrace. She pressed her hands to her face and tried not to cry. This was the right choice. It had to be, even if it felt like tearing herself apart. The days that followed were excruciating. Cole gave her the space she'd asked for. Too much space. He stopped seeking her out, stopped touching her casually, those small gestures that had become second nature, the brush of his hand on her back, the kiss on her forehead before bed. They still shared meals, but the easy conversation had evaporated. They ate in near silence, the scrape of silverware against china deafening. At night, Lena lay in her bed, in her own room, because she couldn't bear to sleep beside him when she was lying by omission, and stared at the ceiling. She told herself this was temporary, that once she figured out how to deal with Vivian, things would go back to normal. But she was beginning to suspect there was no going back. A week after their confrontation on the terrace, Harrison arrived. Cole's advisor was a fixture at the estate, but this visit felt different. He swept in with barely a greeting, his expression grim, and closeted himself with Cole in the study for hours. Lena tried not to eavesdrop, failed spectacularly. She stood in the hallway outside the study, straining to hear through the heavy oak door. Can't ignore this, Cole. Harrison's voice, sharp with frustration. The rumors are spreading. People are asking questions. Let them ask. Cole's voice was flat, hard. It's not that simple. If this gets back to the federal investigators, it won't. You don't know that. A pause. Then Cole, quieter. What do you want me to do, Harrison? Divorce her to save face? Lena's breath caught. I want you to consider your options, Harrison said carefully. This estate, your legacy, it's bigger than one person. She's not just one person, she's my wife. A wife you married under questionable circumstances. That's enough. The words were cold, final. Lena could picture Cole's expression, jaw set, eyes like ice. I'm trying to protect you, Harrison said. By asking me to throw her away? By asking you to be realistic. If Vivian Ashcroft goes public with whatever she's found, she hasn't found anything. Are you sure? Silence. Lena's heart hammered. Get out, Cole said quietly. Cole, I said get out. Footsteps. The door opened. Harrison emerged, spotted Lena, and had the grace to look embarrassed before he hurried down the hall. Lena stood frozen, hand pressed to her chest. Inside the study, she heard the crash of glass hitting a wall. She should go to him, should tell him everything. Vivian's threat, her fear, all of it. But her feet wouldn't move, because if she told him, he'd fight. And fighting meant risk. Risk meant losing. And Lena had lost too much already. So she turned and walked away, leaving Cole alone in his anger. 2 days later, Vivian sent a letter. It arrived with the Morning Post tucked between advertisements and bills. Lena recognized the handwriting immediately. Sharp, elegant, deliberate. She took it to her room, hands shaking, and opened it. Lena, I trust you've had time to consider my proposal. I'm not an unreasonable woman, so I'm giving you 1 more week to make your decision. Leave Cole quietly, and I'll keep what I know to myself. Stay, and I'll make sure everyone, the authorities, the press, the entire county, knows exactly what kind of fraud you've perpetrated. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. My patience has limits. Lena read the letter 3 times, each word sinking deeper like a blade. 1 week. 7 days to decide whether to destroy her life or let Vivian destroy it for her. She crumpled the letter, threw it across the room, and sank onto the bed. This was impossible. There was no good choice. No way out that didn't end in ruin. Unless an idea sparked. Dangerous. Reckless. But maybe, just maybe, possible. Lena stood, smoothed her dress, and went to find Cole. Look. He was in the stables, brushing down one of the horses. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. Lena, we need to talk. Cole set down the brush, wiped his hands on his pants. All right. Lena took a breath. I need you to trust me. His eyes narrowed. What's going on? I can't explain, not yet. But I need you to trust that I'm doing what's best for both of us. Lena, you're scaring me. I know. And I'm sorry. She stepped closer, took his hands. But I need you to promise me something. What? If something happens, if things go wrong, I need you to let me handle it. Don't try to save me. Don't sacrifice yourself. Just trust that I know what I'm doing. Cole's jaw tightened. What the hell is going on? Please, Cole, promise me. He stared at her, and she could see the war in his eyes. The desire to demand answers, the fear of losing her, the desperate need to protect. Finally, he said, I can't promise that. Why not? Because protecting you isn't optional, Lena. It's not something I can just turn off. Even if it destroys you? Even then, Lena's throat tightened. That's not fair. I don't care about fair, I care about you. She wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, wanted to make him understand that his heroism was the very thing that was going to ruin them both. But she couldn't, because he was Cole Bennett, and martyrdom was written into his bones. Then I'm sorry, she said quietly, for what I'm about to do. Before he could respond, she turned and walked out. Cole called after her, but she didn't stop. She had 1 week. 1 week to outmaneuver Vivian, protect Cole, and save the fragile life they'd built. And she was going to do it alone. Lena spent the next 2 days digging. She went through old society pages at the library, talked to shopkeepers who'd known Vivian for years, pried information out of gossiping staff at the country club, and slowly, a picture emerged. Vivian Ashcroft was desperate. Her father, the mayor, was up for re-election and losing badly. The family fortune had been quietly hemorrhaging for years. Bad investments, lavish spending, a lifestyle they could no longer afford. Vivian needed money, and more importantly, she needed status. Marrying Cole would solve both problems in one move, but that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was what Lena found in a decade-old newspaper clipping, buried in the archives. A scandal, a lawsuit. Vivian's father accused of embezzling city funds. The charges had been dropped, quietly, suspiciously quietly. Lena's hands shook as she photocopied the article. This was it, leverage. If Vivian wanted to threaten exposure, Lena could do the same. It wasn't pretty, wasn't noble, but it was survival. She arranged to meet Vivian at a cafe in town. Neutral ground. Public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. Vivian arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a cream coat and a condescending smile. Lena, how unexpected. Sit down, Vivian. The smile faltered. Vivian sat. Lena slid the photocopied article across the table. Vivian glanced at it. Her face went pale. Where did you get this? Public records. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look. Vivian's hands clenched. This is ancient history. It was dismissed. Because your father paid someone off. We both know it. You can't prove that. Maybe not. But I can raise the question, loudly, publicly, right before the election. Lena leaned forward. How do you think the voters will react to that? Vivian's eyes flashed. You wouldn't dare. Try me. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Vivian laughed. Bitter. Sharp. You really think you can beat me at this game? I don't need to beat you, I just need to make the cost too high. And what cost is that? Your father's career, your family's reputation, everything you're trying to protect by destroying me. Lena's voice hardened. Walk away, Vivian. Leave me and Cole alone, or I'll make sure your family goes down in flames. Vivian's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Finally, Vivian stood. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Vivian grabbed her coat, leaned close. You might have won this round, but Cole will never truly be yours. He's too broken, too damaged, and one day, he's going to realize you're not worth the trouble. The words hit like venom, but Lena didn't flinch. Maybe, she said quietly, but that's his choice, not yours. Vivian's face twisted. Then she turned and stormed out. Lena sat alone at the table, heart pounding, hands shaking. She'd done it, faced down the threat. Saved herself. But the victory tasted like ash. Because Vivian's words had burrowed under her skin, found the doubt already festering there. What if she was right? What if Lena was just another problem Cole would eventually tire of solving? She pushed the thought away, paid for her untouched coffee, and walked out into the cold. Otit. She didn't tell Cole about the meeting, didn't tell him about Vivian's threat, or the article, or the ugly confrontation that had saved them both. She just came home, kissed him hello like nothing had happened, and tried to pretend the weight on her chest wasn't suffocating her. That night, they had dinner together. Cole asked about her day. Lena said it was fine, boring, nothing special. He looked at her like he knew she was lying, but he didn't push, and Lena hated herself for being relieved. 3 days later, everything fell apart. Lena was in the garden when she heard the shouting. She ran toward the house, heart in her throat, and found Cole and Harrison in the foyer, faces flushed, voices raised. Can't just ignore this, Harrison was saying. The press is running with it. Running with what? Cole's voice was dangerously low. Harrison thrust a newspaper at him. Cole read it, and his face went white. What is this? Exactly what it looks like. Lena approached slowly. What's going on? Cole looked at her, and the expression in his eyes made her stomach drop. Betrayal, confusion, hurt. He handed her the newspaper. The headline screamed in bold print, Bennett marriage a sham? Sources claim rancher's wife was hired for convenience. Lena's vision blurred. No, this isn't what? Cole's voice cracked. True? It's not the whole truth, but it's part of it. She couldn't deny that. Couldn't lie. Not now. Cole, please. How did this happen? He turned to Harrison. Who leaked this? Harrison looked grim. We don't know, but whoever it was had details, dates, amounts. Cole's hands clenched. Vivian. Possibly. I thought... He looked at Lena. I thought you handled it. Lena's blood went cold. How did you... Mrs. Brennan told me you've been acting strange. I put it together. His eyes were hard, wounded. You met with Vivian, didn't you? Yes. And you didn't tell me. I was protecting you. By lying? By handling it myself. This isn't handling it, Lena. This is a disaster. The words echoed through the foyer. Lena's throat burned. I'm sorry. I thought if I just... You thought you could do it alone. Cole's laugh was bitter. Even after everything, even after I told you we're in this together, you still don't trust me. That's not true. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. The confession ripped out of her, raw and desperate. Cole stopped, stared. Afraid of what? He asked quietly. Of losing you. Of watching you sacrifice yourself again. Of being the reason everything you've built falls apart. Tears streamed down her face. I thought if I could just fix it quietly, we could move on. But I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Cole's expression cracked. He reached for her. Then Harrison's phone rang. He answered, listened. His face went gray. It's the federal investigators, he said. They're reopening the case. The next 48 hours were a blur of lawyers and depositions and damage control. The investigators came back. Harder this time, armed with the newspaper article, they tore through every document, every statement, every alibi. And they found the cracks. Not proof of fraud, not exactly, but enough inconsistencies to raise questions, enough doubt to warrant further investigation. Cole and Lena sat across from a team of attorneys, listening as they outlined the best case and worst case scenarios. Best case, the investigation stalled. They paid a fine. Life went on. Worst case, criminal charges. Prison time for both of them. There is one option, the lead attorney said carefully. If you annul the marriage, claim it was entered under duress or misunderstanding, it could mitigate the damage. No, Cole said immediately. Mr. Bennett, if you don't, I said no. The attorney exchanged glances with his colleagues. You could both go to prison. Then we go together. Lena's heart shattered. Cole, you can't. I can, and I will. He looked at her, eyes fierce. I'm not losing you. Not to this. Not to anything. But if we annul, then it's like none of it ever happened, like we never mattered. His voice softened. I'd rather go to prison with you than pretend you were never real. Lena's throat closed. She reached for his hand, gripped it tight. The attorney sighed. Then we fight. The trial preparation consumed them. Days blurred into nights. Lena gave depositions until her voice went hoarse. Cole met with experts, character witnesses, anyone who could testify to the legitimacy of their relationship. It should have brought them together. Instead, the stress drove wedges between them. Cole became obsessed with controlling every detail, snapping at lawyers, pacing the study until dawn. Lena withdrew into herself, the guilt eating her alive. Every time she looked at Cole, she saw the cost of her silence, the damage her fear had caused. They stopped touching, stopped talking about anything that wasn't the case. One night, Lena found Cole in his study, surrounded by papers, eyes bloodshot. You should sleep, she said quietly. I can't. Cole, do you know what they're going to ask you on the stand? His voice was rough. They're going to ask if you married me for money, if you ever loved me, if any of it was real. Lena's chest tightened. I'll tell them the truth. Which is what? She crossed to him, knelt beside his chair. That I married you for survival, but I stayed because I fell in love with you, because you made me believe I was worth more than my circumstances, because you're the best man I've ever known, even when you're being an idiot. Cole's eyes glistened. I'm so tired, Lena. I know. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe we can't. Maybe we just have to survive it. He pulled her into his lap, buried his face in her neck. I can't lose you. You won't. Promise me. I promise. She didn't know if it was a lie, but in that moment, it was all she had to give. The night before the hearing, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. Tomorrow, their lives would be dissected in front of strangers. Every choice, every lie, every moment of truth laid bare. And when it was over, they'd either walk away free or be torn apart. There was no middle ground. She got up, pulled on a robe, and wandered to Cole's room. He was awake, sitting by the window, staring out at the dark valley. Can't sleep either? She asked. He shook his head. Lena sat beside him, took his hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said quietly, I want you to know something. What? This, us? It was real. Every moment, every word, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Cole's fingers tightened around hers. I know. Do you? He turned to face her, eyes serious. Lena, you're the only real thing in my life, the only thing that matters. And no matter what they say tomorrow, no matter what verdict they hand down, that doesn't change. What if they send us to prison? Then we survive it, together. What if they separate us? They won't. But if they do, then I'll find you. I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. His voice was fierce, certain. You're not getting rid of me, Lena Bennett. Not now. Not ever. Lena's vision blurred. She kissed him, desperate and clinging, like she could pour all her fear and love and hope into that single moment. When they pulled apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. Lena wanted to believe him, but as the first light of dawn crept over the mountains, all she could do was hold on tight and pray he was right. The courthouse was smaller than Lena had imagined. Plain gray stone, tall windows that let in harsh morning light, wooden benches worn smooth by decades of anxious hands. It smelled like floor polish and old paper, and the particular kind of fear that came from having your entire life weighed by strangers. Cole sat beside her at the defense table, shoulders rigid, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, tie knotted perfectly. Every inch the respectable rancher. But Lena could see the tension thrumming through him, could feel the barely controlled panic radiating off his skin. She wanted to reach for his hand, wanted to tell him it would be okay. But the lawyers had been clear. No displays of affection in court. Nothing that could be construed as performance. Just sit, listen, answer truthfully. So Lena sat with her hands folded in her lap, back straight, wearing a navy dress Cole had bought her months ago. Simple, modest, the kind of thing a real wife would wear. The irony wasn't lost on her. The gallery behind them was packed. Journalists, curious townspeople. Vivian Ashcroft in the third row, wearing black like she was attending a funeral, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. Lena forced herself not to look back, not to give Vivian the satisfaction. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, it began. The prosecution opened with a statement so brutal it made Lena's stomach turn. They painted her as a con artist, a calculating opportunist who'd manipulated a vulnerable man for financial gain. They talked about the money Cole had paid her, $5,000, deposited the day after the wedding. They showed bank records, highlighted the original contract, which someone had leaked to the press. This wasn't a marriage, the prosecutor said, his voice ringing through the courtroom. This was a transaction, a fraud perpetrated against the federal government for the purposes of tax evasion and inheritance manipulation. And both defendants knew exactly what they were doing. Lena felt the weight of 100 eyes on her, judging, condemning. Cole's jaw tightened, but he didn't move, didn't flinch. When the prosecution finished, their attorney stood. Marcus Chen was sharp, mid-40s, with the kind of calm, measured demeanor that made people trust him. He'd come highly recommended, and watching him now, Lena understood why. Your Honor, the prosecution would have you believe this is a simple case of fraud, but the truth is far more complicated. Marcus walked toward the jury, hands open, expression earnest. Yes, Cole and Lena Bennett's marriage began unconventionally. Yes, there was a contract. Yes, money changed hands. But none of that negates the legitimacy of their union. People marry for all kinds of reasons: financial security, companionship, family pressure. Some marriages start as arrangements and become real. That's not fraud. That's life. He paused, let the words settle. What the prosecution won't tell you is that Cole and Lena destroyed that original contract 6 months ago. That they chose to stay together, not because of money, not because of obligation, but because they fell in love. That's not criminal. That's human. Lena's throat tightened. She glanced at Cole. He was staring straight ahead, but she saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. Marcus continued. Over the next few days, you'll hear testimony from people who know the Bennetts, who've seen their relationship evolve, who can attest to the fact that what started as a business arrangement became a genuine marriage. And when you've heard all the evidence, I believe you'll come to the same conclusion I have. These two people may have started their journey unconventionally, but they're guilty of nothing more than finding love in an unexpected place. He sat down. The judge looked at the prosecution. Call your first witness. The prosecution calls Vivian Ashcroft. Lena's blood turned to ice. Vivian stood, smoothed her dress, and walked to the witness stand with the graceful confidence of someone who'd been born for this. She was sworn in, sat down, and smiled at the prosecutor like they were old friends. Miss Ashcroft, the prosecutor began, how long have you known Cole Bennett? Nearly 10 years. Our families have been close for generations. And in all that time, did Mr. Bennett ever mention being in a relationship? Never. Cole was always very private, very focused on his work. Did he ever mention Lena Whitaker? Not until he suddenly announced they were married. Vivian's tone was perfectly calibrated, surprised, slightly hurt. It was quite a shock. Why is that? Because Cole had always been adamant about remaining single. He used to say marriage was a distraction he couldn't afford. The prosecutor nodded. And when you met Mrs. Bennett, what was your impression? Vivian's eyes flicked to Lena. That she didn't belong. Can you elaborate? She was out of place. She didn't know how to navigate our social circles, didn't understand the etiquette. She seemed uncomfortable, like she was playing a role. Objection, Marcus said, standing. Speculation. I'll allow it, the judge said. The witness is describing her observations. Marcus sat back down, face impassive. The prosecutor continued. Did you ever suspect the marriage might not be legitimate? I had my doubts, Vivian admitted. But I didn't want to believe Cole would do something like that. I thought perhaps I was wrong. What changed your mind? I started asking questions, quietly. And the more I dug, the more inconsistencies I found. No engagement announcement, no wedding photos, no record of Lena Whitaker before 3 years ago. And what did you do with that information? I went to the authorities. Because I care about Cole, and I didn't want to see him ruin his life over a lie. Lena's hands clenched. The performance was flawless. Vivian had positioned herself as the concerned friend, not the vindictive ex-lover, and the jury was eating it up. Your witness, the prosecutor said, sitting down. Marcus stood slowly. He didn't approach Vivian right away, just stood there, studying her, letting the silence stretch. Miss Ashcroft, he said finally. You testified that you care about Cole Bennett. I do. How would you characterize your relationship with him? Vivian hesitated. We're friends. Just friends? Yes. Have you ever wanted to be more than friends? Objection, the prosecutor said. Relevance. Goes to bias, Your Honor, Marcus said calmly. The judge considered. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Miss Ashcroft. Vivian's smile tightened. Cole and I dated briefly, years ago. It didn't work out. Who ended it? He did. And how did you feel about that? Disappointed, but I moved on. Did you? Marcus pulled a paper from his file. Isn't it true that you approached Mrs. Bennett 3 weeks ago and threatened to expose her marriage as a fraud unless she left Cole? The courtroom erupted in whispers. Vivian's face flushed. That's not... I have a sworn affidavit from a waitress at the Blue Ridge Cafe who overheard the conversation. Would you like me to read it? Vivian's jaw clenched. It wasn't a threat. It was advice. Advice that included blackmail? Objection. The prosecutor was on his feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Chen. Marcus nodded. Miss Ashcroft, did you tell Mrs. Bennett that you would go to the authorities if she didn't leave Cole? Vivian's eyes flashed. I suggested she consider what was best for everyone involved, by threatening her, by being honest. Marcus let the silence hang. Then he said, no further questions. Vivian left the stand, her composure cracked just enough for Lena to see the fury beneath. The judge called a recess. Cole and Lena were led to a small conference room where Marcus waited, looking pleased. That went well, he said. She still made us look guilty, Lena said quietly. She made herself look vindictive. The jury saw it. Marcus pulled out his notes. But we're not out of the woods. The prosecution is going to hammer on the contract, the money, the timing. We need to counter that with testimony that shows your relationship evolved, that it became real. Who's testifying for us? Cole asked. Mrs. Brennan. Harrison, despite his reservations. A few of your business associates who've seen you together. Marcus looked at Lena. And you. Lena's stomach dropped. Me? You're our strongest witness. The jury needs to hear your side, why you agreed to the arrangement when things changed, why you stayed. And if they don't believe me, then we lose. The words settled like lead in Lena's chest. Cole reached for her hand, squeezed. You can do this. I don't know if I can. I do. Marcus stood. We reconvene in 20 minutes. Lena, just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. After he left, Cole turned to her. Hey, look at me. Lena met his eyes. You're the strongest person I know, Cole said. You survived losing everything. You built yourself back up. You faced down Vivian. You can do this. What if I say the wrong thing? There is no wrong thing, just the truth. Lena's throat burned. I'm scared. Me too. He cupped her face. But we're doing this together. No matter what happens, we're together. She leaned into his touch, closed her eyes, and tried to believe him. The afternoon session began with Mrs. Brennan on the stand. She looked nervous but determined, her hands folded primly in her lap as the prosecutor questioned her. Mrs. Brennan, you've worked for Cole Bennett for how long? 15 years? And in that time, how many women has he brought to the estate? Objection, Marcus said. Relevance. Goes to pattern of behavior, Your Honor. Overruled. Answer the question, Mrs. Brennan. Mrs. Brennan looked uncomfortable. None. Until Lena. None. So it's fair to say Mr. Bennett wasn't in the habit of romantic relationships? Cole was private. That doesn't mean he was incapable of love. But he never showed interest before Mrs. Whitaker arrived. Not that I saw. The prosecutor nodded. When Mrs. Whitaker first came to the estate, what was her role? She was hired as household staff. And then suddenly she became Mrs. Bennett. Did that strike you as odd? Mrs. Brennan's eyes narrowed. I've seen stranger things, such as people who marry for money and never fall in love. People who marry for love and end up hating each other. Marriage is complicated. Cole and Lena's story is unconventional, but that doesn't make it invalid. But you admit it started as a transaction. I admit it started as a practical arrangement, like half the marriages in history. A few people in the gallery chuckled. The prosecutor frowned. No further questions. Marcus stood. Mrs. Brennan, you've known Cole Bennett for 15 years. In your observation, has his relationship with Lena changed him? Mrs. Brennan's expression softened. Completely. How so? Cole used to be closed off, angry. He carried his father's legacy like a weight around his neck. But Lena, she smiled. Lena made him laugh, made him open up. I've seen them together when they don't know anyone's watching. The way he looks at her, that's not an act, that's love. Thank you, Mrs. Brennan. She stepped down, and Lena felt a flicker of hope. Harrison testified next. He was stiff, formal, clearly uncomfortable, but he corroborated Mrs. Brennan's account. That Cole had changed, that the relationship appeared genuine, that whatever the marriage's origins, it had evolved into something real. By the time the prosecution rested for the day, Lena's nerves were frayed to breaking. That night, she and Cole returned to the estate in silence. The house felt hollow, empty, like it was holding its breath. They ate dinner without speaking, went to their separate rooms. But at midnight, Lena heard her door open. Cole stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall light. I can't sleep, he said quietly. Neither can I. He crossed to the bed, sat beside her. Tomorrow's going to be hard. I know. The prosecution is going to tear you apart. I know that too. Cole took her hand. Just remember, you're not on trial for being human, for surviving, for making hard choices. Feels like I am. Then fight back. Show them who you really are. Not the desperate girl who walked into my life. The woman you've become. Lena looked at him. This man who'd seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. What if it's not enough? She whispered. It will be. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you're enough for me. And if they can't see that, they're blind. Lena's eyes burned. She leaned into him, let him hold her, and tried to find the strength for tomorrow. The next morning, Lena took the stand. Her legs shook as she crossed the courtroom. The Bible felt heavy in her hand as she swore to tell the truth. And when she sat down, facing the packed gallery, she felt like she was standing naked in front of a firing squad. The prosecutor approached slowly, a predator sizing up prey. Mrs. Bennett, or should I say, Miss Whitaker? It's Mrs. Bennett, Lena said quietly. Is it? Because according to these records, you were paid $5,000 the day after your wedding. That sounds more like an employee than a wife. I was both. How convenient. The prosecutor's smile was cold. Let's start at the beginning. When you arrived at the Bennett estate, you were destitute, correct? I was struggling financially. You had $3 to your name. You were about to be evicted. You were desperate. Lena's hands clenched. Yes. And then Cole Bennett offered you money to pretend to be his wife. That's not how it happened. No? Then please enlighten us. Lena took a breath. Cole needed a wife to satisfy the terms of his father's will. I needed money to survive. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. An arrangement, not a marriage. It started as an arrangement. And when did it become a marriage? I don't know the exact moment. It was gradual. How convenient that you can't pinpoint when this supposed transformation occurred. It's not convenient. It's honest. Love doesn't happen on a schedule. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. Love? You claim you fell in love with a man who paid you to marry him. Yes. Isn't it possible you simply became comfortable with the lifestyle, the money, the status? No. You expect this court to believe that you, a woman with nothing, turned down money and comfort because of love? I didn't turn it down, I earned it. By lying. By being his partner. The prosecutor's eyes glittered. Let's talk about the contract. You signed an agreement to play a role for 1 year, is that correct? Yes. And in exchange, Cole Bennett paid you $5,000. Yes. So by definition, this was a business transaction. At first, but you kept the money, didn't you? Lena's stomach churned. Yes. Even after you claimed to have fallen in love. The money allowed me to stand on my own feet, to not feel like a charity case. Or it allowed you to secure your financial future regardless of whether the marriage lasted. That's not why I kept it. Then why? Because Cole gave it to me freely, because I'd earned it by stepping into an impossible situation and making it work. The prosecutor leaned closer. You earned it by committing fraud. Objection! Marcus was on his feet. Assumes facts not in evidence. Sustained, rephrase. The prosecutor stepped back. Mrs. Bennett, did you marry Cole Bennett intending to stay married to him? Lena's heart pounded. I married him intending to honor our agreement, which was 1 year. Yes. So no, you didn't intend to stay married. Not at first, but things changed. When? Over time. Can you be more specific? Lena's mind raced. She thought of the night in the library, the gala, the kiss that had shattered everything. There wasn't one moment, she said finally. It was 1,000 small ones. The way he listened when I talked, the way he made me feel safe, the way he looked at me like I mattered. Her voice cracked. I didn't plan to fall in love with him, but I did. How touching. The prosecutor's tone was acid. And yet, you kept secrets from him, didn't you? Lena's throat tightened. What do you mean? You met with Vivian Ashcroft without telling your husband. You made decisions about your shared future without consulting him. That doesn't sound like a partnership. That sounds like someone protecting their investment. I was protecting him. From what? From having to choose between me and everything he'd built. Because you knew he'd choose you. Yes. Because you'd manipulated him into caring about you. No. Lena's voice hardened. Because he's a good man who would sacrifice himself for the people he loves, and I couldn't let him do that. So you lied to him. I made a mistake. A convenient mistake. Objection, Marcus said. Argumentative. Sustained. The prosecutor looked at the jury. No further questions. Lena felt hollowed out, exposed, like every ugly truth had been dragged into the light. Marcus approached for redirect. His expression was calm, but Lena could see the concern in his eyes. Lena, he said gently, why did you really marry Cole? Because I was desperate, because I had no other options. And why did you stay? Lena looked at Cole. He was watching her, eyes red-rimmed, expression raw. Because somewhere along the way, survival became love, she said quietly. Because he made me believe I was worth more than my worst moments. Because every day with him felt like coming home. Her voice broke. I stayed because I couldn't imagine leaving. And if you could go back, knowing everything that's happened, the investigation, the trial, all of it, would you still marry him? Lena didn't hesitate. Yes. Why? Because loving him is the best decision I've ever made, even when it's hard, even when it costs me everything. Marcus nodded. Thank you, Lena. She stepped down, legs shaking, and returned to her seat. Cole reached for her hand under the table. She gripped it like a lifeline. The judge called another recess. In the conference room, Marcus looked grim. "That was brutal." "I know," Lena whispered, "but you held your ground. The jury saw your honesty. That counts. Will it be enough? I don't know." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The prosecution called their final witness, a forensic accountant who walked the jury through every suspicious transaction, every questionable timing, every piece of evidence that suggested fraud. It was damning, methodical, impossible to refute. By the time he finished, Lena felt like the walls were closing in. Marcus did his best on cross-examination, but there was only so much he could do against hard numbers. When the prosecution rested, the judge looked at Marcus. "Does the defense wish to call any further witnesses?" Marcus stood. "Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Cole Bennett." Lena's heart stopped. Cole stood, walked to the stand, and was sworn in. He looked exhausted, haunted, but when he sat down and his eyes found Lena's, there was steel in them. Marcus approached. "Mr. Bennett, why did you marry Lena Whitaker?" "Because I needed a wife to satisfy my father's will." "And why Lena specifically?" "Because she was desperate enough to say yes." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. "That's quite an admission," Marcus said. "It's the truth." "And when did your feelings change?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "I don't know that they changed. I think they were always there. I just didn't recognize them." "What do you mean?" "I told myself I was helping her, giving her a way out. But the truth is, she was helping me." Cole's voice roughened. "My father built this empire on cruelty, on control. I thought that was the only way to survive. And then Lena walked into my life and showed me something different." "Which was?" "That strength doesn't have to mean being alone. That letting someone in isn't weakness." "Do you love her?" "Yes." "Did you love her when you married her?" Cole hesitated. "I think I did. I just didn't know it yet." "And now?" "Now I can't imagine my life without her." Marcus nodded. "Your witness." The prosecutor stood. "Mr. Bennett, you've painted a very romantic picture. But let's talk facts. You paid Lena Whitaker $5,000 to marry you." "Yes? That's not love. That's a transaction." "It was both." "You can't have it both ways." "Why not?" Cole's eyes hardened. "I paid her because she needed money, because I needed help. But feelings don't follow logic. They don't care about contracts or transactions. I fell in love with her despite the arrangement. Maybe because of it. How convenient for you both." "There's nothing convenient about this. We're sitting in a courtroom facing prison because we made unconventional choices. If we'd wanted convenience, we would have walked away months ago." The prosecutor's jaw tightened. "Did you know that Lena met with Vivian Ashcroft and didn't tell you?" "Yes." "And that didn't concern you?" "It hurt, but I understood why she did it." "Why?" "Because she was trying to protect me. That's what people do when they love each other. Or when they're protecting their investment. Lena doesn't have an investment. She has me, and I have her. That's all that matters." The prosecutor stared at him, then said, "No further questions." Cole stepped down and returned to his seat. Lena's hand found his. He gripped it tight. Both sides gave their closing arguments. The prosecutor painted them as con artists. Marcus painted them as flawed people who'd found real love in unexpected circumstances. The jury was sent to deliberate. And then, there was nothing to do but wait. They waited in the conference room for hours. Marcus paced. Cole sat motionless, staring at nothing. Lena counted the cracks in the ceiling. At 4:47 p.m., a bailiff knocked. "Jury's back!" Lena's stomach dropped. They filed back into the courtroom. The jury looked tired, serious, impossible to read. The judge asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The forewoman stood. "We have, Your Honor." "What say you?" "On the charge of fraud, we find the defendants not guilty." Lena's knees buckled. Cole caught her, held her upright. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. "However," the forewoman continued, We do find that the marriage was entered under questionable circumstances. We recommend the court impose a fine and require the defendants to remarry within 90 days to legitimize the union. The judge nodded. So ordered. The defendants will each pay a fine of $10,000. They have 90 days to remarry or the original marriage will be annulled. Court adjourned. The gavel fell. Lena turned to Cole, tears streaming down her face. "We won," she whispered. "We won." They collapsed into each other, holding on like they'd never let go. Around them, people filtered out. Vivian left without a word, her face stony. Marcus shook their hands, congratulations muted by exhaustion. But Cole and Lena barely noticed. They'd survived, together, and that was all that mattered. The drive back to the estate felt like moving through a dream. Cole's hand stayed locked with Lena's the entire way, his thumb tracing circles on her palm like he needed the constant reassurance that she was real, that this was real, that they'd actually made it through. Neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that came after a storm when the world was still catching its breath. The verdict echoed in Lena's mind. Not guilty. The words should have brought relief, but instead she felt hollowed out, like she'd been scraped clean and didn't quite know how to fill herself back up. They'd won. But the cost, the exposure, the scrutiny, the months of fear, had left marks that wouldn't fade easily. When they pulled up to the house, the sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of gold and crimson. Mrs. Brennan stood on the front steps, hands twisted in her apron, eyes red-rimmed. The moment she saw them, she rushed forward. "Thank heavens," she breathed, pulling Lena into a fierce embrace. "I've been pacing for hours. I thought—" Her voice broke. "I thought I might lose you both." "We're okay," Lena whispered. "We're here." Mrs. Brennan pulled back, cupped Lena's face with weathered hands. "You're more than okay. You're fighters. Both of you." Cole squeezed the older woman's shoulder. "Thank you for everything you said on the stand. It mattered." "I only told the truth." Mrs. Brennan wiped her eyes. "Now get inside. I've made dinner. You both look like you haven't eaten in days." She wasn't wrong. The meal was simple. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh bread. But it was the first thing Lena had tasted in weeks that didn't turn to ash in her mouth. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, letting the normalcy of it seep into their bones. Afterward, Cole walked Lena to her room. They stood in the doorway, neither quite ready to let go. 90 days, Cole said quietly. Lena nodded. "We have to remarry." "Do you want to?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lena looked up at him, at this man who'd stood beside her through hell, who'd risked everything, who'd loved her even when it would have been easier to walk away. "I want to marry you every day for the rest of my life," she said. "But not because a judge told us to. Not to satisfy a verdict." "Then why?" "Because I choose you, not survival, not obligation, just you." Cole's eyes shone. He pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. "I choose you too. I always will." They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, finding their center. "Get some rest," Cole murmured. "Tomorrow, we figure out the next steps." But when Lena climbed into bed, sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept circling back to the verdict, to the condition, to the 90-day deadline hanging over them like a sword. She understood what the jury had done. They'd seen the truth, that the marriage had been real, that the love was genuine, but they'd also seen the mess of how it started. The fine was punishment. The remarriage requirement was a test. Prove it's real. Prove you're not just protecting yourselves. Lena stared at the ceiling, heart heavy with a question she hadn't dared voice in court. What if they couldn't? What if the weight of everything they'd been through had broken something fundamental? What if the love that had felt so certain now carried too many scars to survive? She must have eventually slept because she woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. Cole was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a shower. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her chest ache. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He poured her a cup of coffee, passed it over. Their fingers brushed. The touch sent electricity up her arm. "I've been thinking," Cole said, "about the remarriage." Lena's stomach tightened. "And?" "I don't want to wait 90 days. She blinked. "What?" I want to marry you now, this week, as soon as possible. Cole, not because we have to, because I want to. He set down his mug, took both her hands. I want to stand in front of people who matter and tell them I choose you. I want a ceremony that's ours. Not a transaction, not a legal necessity, just us making a promise we actually mean. Lena's throat tightened. You're serious? Completely. We just survived a trial. We're exhausted. We need time to what? Overthink it? Talk ourselves out of it? Cole's grip tightened. Lena, I've spent my entire life being careful, being strategic, and it's gotten me nothing but an empty house and a legacy I didn't want. I'm done being careful. I want you. I want this. And I don't want to waste another second pretending we need permission or perfect timing. Lena's eyes burned. What if I'm not ready? Then we wait. I'll wait as long as you need. But you just said, I want to marry you now, but what I need is for you to be sure. Really sure. Not because a court ordered it, not because you feel obligated, because you want to. Lena looked at him, at the raw honesty in his face, and felt something crack open in her chest. She'd been so focused on surviving, on getting through the trial, on protecting what they'd built, that she'd forgotten to ask herself what she actually wanted, not what was safe, not what made sense, what she wanted. And the answer was startlingly simple. Yes, she whispered. Cole went very still. Yes? Yes. I want to marry you, this week, this month, whenever. Just, yes. A smile broke across his face, bright and unguarded in a way she'd never seen before. He pulled her into his arms, lifted her off the ground, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world, and none of it mattered except this moment. When he set her down, they were both breathless. Okay, Cole said, voice rough with emotion. Let's do this right. Over the next week, they planned a wedding that was nothing like the first. No courthouse, no strangers as witnesses, no clinical exchange of vows in a room that smelled like bureaucracy. Instead, they chose the valley. The land Cole had spent his life protecting, the place that had witnessed their evolution from strangers to partners to something far deeper. Mrs. Brennan threw herself into preparations with the fervor of a woman on a mission. She enlisted the household staff, called in favors from every vendor in 3 counties, and somehow transformed a simple outdoor ceremony into something that felt both intimate and magical. Lena tried to help, but Mrs. Brennan shooed her away. You've done enough, dear. Let me do this for you. So Lena wandered the estate, watching the transformation unfold, and tried to process the fact that this was actually happening. She found Cole in the stables one afternoon, brushing down one of the horses. He looked up when she entered, smiled that soft smile he reserved just for her. Hiding? She asked. Regrouping. He gestured to the stall. Mrs. Brennan's terrifying when she's in planning mode. Lena laughed. She made me pick between 3 different shades of white tablecloths. I couldn't see the difference. There isn't one, but don't tell her that. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound the rhythmic brush of bristles against the horse's coat. Are you nervous? Lena asked eventually. Terrified. About the wedding. About deserving you. Lena's chest tightened. She crossed to him, took the brush from his hands, set it aside. Cole Bennett, you are the most infuriating, stubborn, impossibly good man I've ever met, and you deserve every bit of happiness you can find. I don't know about that. I do. She cupped his face. You saved me, not just from poverty, from believing I didn't matter, that I was disposable. You made me feel seen, valued, loved. Cole's eyes glistened. You did the same for me. Then we're even. Not even close. He pulled her against him, rested his chin on top of her head. I don't know what I did to deserve you walking into my life, but I'm going to spend the rest of it trying to be worthy of it. You already are. They held each other in the quiet barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses and possibility, and for the first time in months, Lena felt something she'd almost forgotten. Peace. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright. The valley was dressed in early spring, wildflowers dotting the grass, trees beginning to bud, the air carrying that particular crispness that promised warmth to come. Lena stood in front of the mirror in her room, staring at her reflection. The dress was simple: ivory silk, long sleeves, a neckline that dipped just enough to be elegant without being ostentatious. Mrs. Brennan had helped her choose it, eyes wet with tears the moment Lena had stepped out of the fitting room. "You look like a bride," the older woman had said. A real one. Now, alone in her room, Lena touched the fabric, marveling at how different this felt from the first time. Then, she'd worn a borrowed dress and a forced smile. Now, she wore hope. A knock at the door. "Come in." Harrison entered, looking uncomfortable in a formal suit. He'd been distant since the trial, the weight of his testimony and divided loyalties clearly taking a toll. But he'd stayed, and when Cole had asked him to give Lena away, he'd agreed. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so." Harrison studied her. "I owe you an apology." Lena blinked. "For what?" "For doubting you. For thinking this was just a scheme. I was wrong." "You were protecting Cole. I understand." "No, you don't." Harrison's expression was serious. "I've worked with Cole for over a decade. I've seen him handle crises, make impossible decisions, build an empire from scraps, but I've never seen him happy. Not until you." He paused. "Whatever this started as, it's real now, and I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner." Lena's throat tightened. "Thank you." Harrison offered his arm. "Come on, let's not keep the groom waiting." They walked through the house, out the back doors, and onto the grounds where chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing a simple wooden arch covered in climbing roses. The gathering was small: Mrs. Brennan and the household staff, a few of Cole's business associates, Marcus Chen, who'd become something like a friend through the ordeal. No press, no society vultures, just people who mattered. And at the front, standing beneath the arch in a navy suit that made his eyes look like storm clouds, was Cole. When his gaze found hers, everything else fell away. Harrison walked her down the makeshift aisle, handed her off to Cole with a firm handshake and a muttered, "Take care of her." "Always," Cole said. They stood facing each other, hands clasped, while a local officiant, a kind-faced woman who'd known Cole since he was a boy, began the ceremony. But Lena barely heard the words. She was too focused on Cole's face, on the way his eyes never left hers, on the slight tremor in his hands that told her he was just as nervous, just as overwhelmed, just as certain. When it came time for vows, Cole went first. "Lena," he began, voice rough. "When you walked into my life, I thought I was hiring help. I thought I was solving a problem. But you weren't a solution. You were a revelation." He took a shaky breath. "You showed me that strength doesn't mean being alone, that letting someone see your scars doesn't make you weak. You made me believe I could be more than my father's son, more than this legacy I inherited." His voice cracked. "I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I promise to spend every day earning it, to choose you, to stand with you, to love you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Lena's vision blurred. She squeezed his hand, steadied herself, and found her voice. "Cole, I came here with nothing, no family, no future, no hope, and you gave me all of it. But more than that, you gave me a reason to believe I was worth saving." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You could have walked away so many times. When things got hard, when the lies caught up to us, when loving me meant risking everything. But you stayed. And you taught me that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about choosing someone, every day, even when it costs you." Her voice broke. "I choose you, Cole Bennett, today, tomorrow, always." The officiant smiled, tears in her own eyes. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Again. Gentle laughter rippled through the small crowd. "Cole, you may kiss your bride, for real this time." Cole cupped Lena's face, thumbs brushing away her tears. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." And when he kissed her, it felt like every promise they'd ever made, every fear they'd overcome, every moment of doubt and hope and desperate belief, all condensed into one perfect, infinite instant. The small gathering erupted in applause. Cole and Lena broke apart, grinning like fools, and turned to face their people. Mrs. Brennan was openly weeping. Harrison looked suspiciously misty-eyed. Marcus gave them a thumbs up. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely perfect. After the ceremony, they held a reception on the terrace. String lights had been hung overhead, casting warm pools of light as the sun began to set. There was music, a local quartet playing soft, jazzy tunes. There was food. Mrs. Brennan had outdone herself with a spread that could have fed twice as many people. And there was laughter, real and unguarded, echoing across the valley. Lena danced with Cole, her head on his shoulder, his arms solid around her. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" "For not giving up on us." Cole pulled back just enough to look at her. "I could never give up on you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Even with all the chaos, especially with the chaos, life was boring before you showed up." Lena laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep and genuine. "Well, I aim to please. You do more than that." Cole's expression turned serious. "You make me want to be better, braver. You make me believe in things I thought I'd lost." "Like what?" "Like the idea that people can change, that legacy isn't destiny, that love can be stronger than fear." Lena's chest ached in the best way. "You taught me those things too." "Then we're even." Finally. They swayed together as the music shifted to something slower, more intimate. Around them, guests chatted and laughed, but Cole and Lena existed in their own bubble, untouchable. Eventually, Mrs. Brennan tapped Cole on the shoulder. "May I?" Cole stepped back with a mock bow. "Of course." The older woman took Lena's hands, eyes twinkling. "You make a beautiful bride, a real one. You keep saying that, because it's true. The first time you were playing a part. This time, you're living it." Lena hugged her, fierce and grateful. "Thank you for believing in us, even when it was hard." "It was never hard, dear. I saw what you two had from the beginning. You just needed time to see it yourselves." As the evening wore on, guests began to filter out. Harrison shook Cole's hand, pulled Lena into an awkward but sincere hug. Marcus promised to send over the final paperwork for closing out the case. Mrs. Brennan supervised the cleanup with military precision. Finally, as the last of the lights were dimmed and the terrace fell quiet, Cole and Lena found themselves alone. They walked through the grounds, hand in hand, the moonlight casting silver across the valley. "What happens now?" Lena asked. Cole considered. "We live. Just like that? Just like that. No more trials, no more performances, just us, figuring out how to build a life together. Sounds simple. It won't be. We'll fight, we'll make mistakes, we'll probably drive each other crazy." "Sounds perfect." Cole laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Yeah, it does." They stopped at the edge of the property, where the land sloped down toward the valley. The view stretched for miles, rolling hills, distant mountains, a sky full of stars. "I used to stand here and feel trapped," Cole said quietly. "Like this place was a cage my father built and I couldn't escape. And now? Now it feels like home, because you're in it." Lena leaned against him, let his warmth seep into her bones. "I never had a home. Not really. Until you. Then we'll build one, together, brick by brick. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." They stood in the quiet, wrapped in each other, and the promise of all the days ahead. The months that followed were not easy. The trial had left marks on their reputation, on their finances, on the fragile trust they'd spent so long building. There were days when the weight of it all felt crushing. Days when they fought about money, about the estate, about how to move forward when the past kept pulling them back. But there were also days of startling beauty. Mornings when they woke up tangled together, sun streaming through the windows, and remembered that they'd chosen this. Evenings when they sat on the terrace and talked about nothing and everything. Nights when the fear and doubt melted away, leaving only the certainty that they were exactly where they needed to be. Lena took over more responsibilities on the estate, not as Cole's wife, but as his partner. She had a head for numbers, a way of talking to vendors that got results, and a fierce protective streak when it came to the people who worked the land. Cole watched her bloom into the role, pride radiating from him. "You're incredible," he told her one day, watching her negotiate a deal that saved them thousands. I learned from the best, she replied, kissing his cheek. They paid off the fines from the trial, slowly, painfully. But they did it together, never once considering the easier option of selling off pieces of the estate. This place is ours now, Cole said. Not my father's, not the government's, ours. And we're not giving it up. Vivian Ashcroft disappeared from their lives as quickly as she'd tried to destroy them. Rumor had it she'd moved to the East Coast, chasing some other conquest. Lena didn't care. The woman had tried to tear them apart and failed. That was all that mattered. A year after the second wedding, Lena woke to find Cole already up, standing by the window with a cup of coffee. "You're up early," she said, joining him. "Couldn't sleep." "Why not?" Cole turned to her, expression soft. "I was thinking about the day you walked into my life, how I almost turned you away, how close I came to never knowing you." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." He set down his coffee, pulled her close. "And every day since, I've been grateful for that. For you. For us." Lena's throat tightened. "Even with everything we went through?" "Especially because of it. We were forged in fire, Lena, and we came out stronger." She looked out at the valley, at the land they'd fought so hard to keep, and felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. They weren't perfect. They probably never would be. But they were real. And they were together. And that was enough. 2 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Lena stood on the terrace holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blue fabric. Cole hovered beside her, eyes wide with wonder and terror in equal measure. "I can't believe he's real," Cole whispered. "He's real, and he's ours." Their son, Thomas Cole Bennett, named for no legacy but their own, slept peacefully, oblivious to the weight of love radiating from his parents. Mrs. Brennan appeared with tea and biscuits, her eyes misty. "He's beautiful, just like his mother. And stubborn like his father," Lena added with a smile. Cole laughed, kissed the top of Thomas's head with heartbreaking gentleness. "He can be whatever he wants, as long as he's happy." "And loved," Lena said. "Always loved." They stood together, this family built on ashes and choice and relentless hope, and watched the sun rise over the valley. The estate would pass to Thomas one day, but it wouldn't be a burden, it would be a gift. A testament to what his parents had built, not through inheritance or obligation, but through courage. The courage to survive, the courage to love, the courage to keep choosing each other, even when the world said it was impossible. Years later, when Thomas was old enough to ask, Lena would tell him the story. Not the sanitized version, not the fairy tale, the truth. About a desperate girl and a guarded man, about a lie that became real, about love that was messy and hard and absolutely worth it. And she would tell him the most important part. That bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward despite it. That love isn't about perfect beginnings. It's about refusing to give up, even when endings seem inevitable. That family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people you choose, the people who choose you back. And that in the harshest worlds, in the darkest moments, in the spaces between survival and surrender, there exists a kind of magic. Not the kind found in stories, but the kind forged in determination, in partnership, in the quiet, radical act of believing that you deserve more than your circumstances. Cole and Lena Bennett built their forever on that belief. Brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. Not perfect, not easy, but undeniably, beautifully, impossibly real. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. They had loved each other through the storm, and they would love each other through whatever came next. Together, always together.